A lot to get to this hour. Fox News alert on a White House push for answers. Did the FBI spy on the Trump presidential campaign during the 2016 election for political reasons? A meeting is set now for tomorrow. It's official with top Republican lawmakers, the FBI, and the Justice Department. But now Democrat leaders want to shut it down. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, editor of townhall.com and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Republican strategist and senior fellow for the Independent Women's Voice, very independent, Lisa Booth.
So independent.
Former deputy spokesperson for the State Department and Fox News analyst and host of the brand new Benson and Harf show on the radio. Marie Harf is here. And in the center seat today, Go Pack Chairman and veteran GOP strategist David Avella. Outnumbered. Great to have you.
Happy Lucky Penny Day.
Oh, is that a thing?
As we all look around now for
Only
penny
if
on
it's
the
had
floor.
there is sincerely a day for everything.
There is.
Today is also World Turtle Day. If you could get them together, you could pennies for a turtle. Oh, the producers are telling me I got to move on. The White House is coordinating a meeting to take place tomorrow to get to the bottom of whether the FBI was improperly spying on the Trump campaign during the election. No one from the White House will attend, but Republican Chairman Nunes and Gowdy will be there along with FBI Director Christopher Wray, Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats, and DOJ official Ed O'Callaghan. The White House says Democrats will not be there because they did not request the information. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, well, he's not happy.
It's unprecedented, it's outrageous, and it has overtones of things that would be done in a banana republic, where the dictator just pushes what he wants done. I just find it mind-numbing, the kind of assault that this president and some of his allies have launched on the Justice Department, and it's just so un-American.
Meanwhile, President Trump tweeted this: look how things have turned around on the criminal deep state. They go after phony collusion with Russia, a made-up scam, and end up getting caught in a major spy scandal, the likes of which this country may never have seen before. What goes around comes around, exclamation point. Then just a short time ago, Senator Schumer and Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to Rod Rosenstein, the deputy AG, and the head of the FBI, Wray, saying they should not hold that meeting. Part of it read this way: such a meeting would be highly irregular and inappropriate during any open criminal or counterintelligence investigation, much less involving the president. At a barest minimum, it creates the appearance of an unseemly opportunity for the president and his enablers to prematurely access investigatory information and selectively leak national security secrets for the purpose of publicly distorting the facts in all this case. They go on to say that if the meeting does happen, Democrat leaders should also attend. So the meeting is not right, but they want to go. David?
The Bob Mueller investigation is officially off the rails. We now have a situation where no matter what outcome this investigation has, a significant portion of Americans are going to feel justice wasn't done, that this was a corrupted investigation, that there were so many missteps in this investigation, there were illegal things done, that it's hard to see how you get true justice out of this. All of that said, the Democrats should be a part of this meeting. Why? Because it's the only way Americans will find out what actually happened in this meeting, because you know Adam Schiff can't wait to run out to get to the microphones to tell you what happened in the meeting, or Chuck Schumer tells his friends at the New York Times or the Washington Post what happened in the meeting.
Wow.
Republicans never leak. You're right. Devin Nunes never leaks anything to the press. Please, come on, members of Congress leak. The reason Democrats should be at this meeting is because if they really want to appear to be bipartisan, and this is not just a partisan issue that they're trying to get to the bottom of, invite the Gang of Eight. That's what happens when you're looking at sensitive classified information, and bring everyone in, and they've requested it, so why not do that? I don't know what the answer
Not
is.
anything broader than the Gang of Eight is what you're saying.
Right.
And that makes sense, actually.
Well,
Yeah.
remember, it was Senator Chuck Schumer who said that it was dumb for President Trump to go after the intelligence community because they would have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. So those remarks he made recently are interesting, given that. And you know who else leaks? James Clapper. Because remember, according to Comey, James Clapper was the one that told President Trump, told James Comey to sit down with President Trump to go over the dossier. James Comey even told President Trump that CNN was looking for a hook to publish the dossier. And then what happens after that meeting? The meeting gets leaked. CNN runs their story, and then BuzzFeed publishes it in whole. And there are concerns about potential politics in play here and bias. Just look at the fact that a Democrat opposition piece, the dossier, was used to obtain a FISA warrant in some format and in some way. Look at the fact that Obama officials unmasked Trump officials in the process as well.
Should Democrats be in the meeting tomorrow then? Go back to the meeting tomorrow. Should Democrats be included?
Sure, but I also think that, again, you're talking about Republicans leaking, so do Democrats. And look at people like James Clapper, who now has a cushy gig on CNN.
Keeps everybody from
Wonder why.
To have everybody at the table. I just want to take everyone back. Okay, remember the empty chair? It was like between two ferns. And the president is sitting there. And back when we were talking shutdowns and all sorts of showdowns and all that. And I recall when Democrats didn't show up to a certain meeting, too. So I just question. I guess they want to fight for some, but not for others. I mean, Chuck Schumer left an empty chair.
At the White House, right. I think it's fair that Democrats want to have a seat at the table for this meeting. What I find interesting is everyone's saying that nobody can leak this information. Of course, we don't want politicians, either Republican or Democrat, giving classified information about what happened here, meaning the beginning of the investigation, which eventually prompted the special counsel to just be leaked without any kind of care to the general public or the media. However, that being said, the entire purpose why the Trump administration and why people like Trey Gowdy have requested this information is because the American people deserve to know what happened, what the abuse was, whether things need to be changed.
If there was abuse.
Right, but that's the big question, right? And we don't know that if there's no transparency. So moving forward, it is important for both sides to see this information and to allow the American people to understand what's going on. Because if the Obama administration, as they had done before by using the federal government to go after their political opponents, used the FBI and the Justice Department and the FISA court system to go after a political opponent to save his legacy in favor of Hillary Clinton, that is corruption. And that is something the American people should be concerned about.
All right. Since we're talking about an FBI informant, potentially, I want to go to this from James Comey, the former director of the FBI. He says in a tweet, facts matter. The FBI's use of confidential human sources, the actual term, is tightly regulated and essential to protecting the country. Attacks on the FBI and lying about its work will do lasting damage to our country. How will Republicans explain this to their grandchildren? David?
James Comey has pretty much discredited himself about one day you don't know whether he's saying is true or not, and him and McCabe are now in this leaking out who did what stuff. Here's the bigger question. Why is Marie's colleague, Eric Holder, not before a committee asking what he did in his justice that he overseen as the head of the Justice Department, who left the Justice Department and is now running an organization to elect Democrats and defeat Republicans? If that is his mentality now, was that his mentality when he was running the show for President Obama?
Are you calling for a hearing on that?
He absolutely should be asked what he knows about all of this.
Going back to what Katie said, I actually agree because I do think we need transparency because there have been so many insinuations and allegations put out in the press that are not backed up by evidence, in part because there's so much classified information. But there's a lot of insinuations being thrown around, I would argue for partisan purposes, to defend the president and discredit the Russia investigation, that I actually want all the information out there because I don't think that there was someone spying on the Trump campaign. I think the intelligence community was looking at Russia.
What about this
transparency that it says,
what would you say about this informant then? Like, this person didn't just come out of thin air. In fact, Democrats are so protective of this person. They're concerned that this person actually could be harmed if his name comes out. So what exactly was he doing?
So, I mean, what Jim Comey said is right. And I don't know anything about this specific
By the way, we
informant.
already have his name because it leaked.
But what Comey, that's right. But what Comey said is right. The use of these informants is very tightly regulated. It is very strictly controlled.
All right. So there is an informant. We all agree on that.
I don't know. But if there's any evidence that that was abused, I would like to see it too. We just need to be careful
We've already
about
seen evidence of bias.
We have not seen evidence that the FBI acted in a way.
We've seen evidence
that
in the
was
text
improper.
messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa
Do you have
Page that there was
evidence
a
that
level
impacted the
of bias.
investigation?
I honestly
Do you
think
have
the only
information
way
that impacted the investigation?
we are going to get to the
don't.
bottom of this. No, because I think the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this is the Inspector General, personally, because I think every entity here is too tainted. People don't trust Congress anymore. Look at the approval ratings of Congress. People don't trust the FBI anymore with good reason. People don't trust the DOJ anymore with good reason. And people don't trust President Trump either. So the only entity here that is truly nonpartisan, that has a history of going after government abuse when needed, is the Inspector General. So I think that is the only hope to try to regain trust in these institutions and to get to some level of truth in all of this.
There'll be some things that the Inspector General can't get his hands on, like people who've left these agencies, which is why there is a call for a second special counsel, which can go all latitudes, and we couldn't control that. But that's one of the arguments for it. So I want to get back to this meeting tomorrow, though, Katie, because Republicans are saying that Democrats were not invited to the table because they didn't request the information that they're going to be taking a look at. Do you think they go back and they say they make an exception? I mean, how does this go forward and become bipartisan, or do you think it doesn't?
I don't think that it will. I think that the special counsel investigation and everything has been so politicized. And if it is true that, again, the Justice Department was using the power of the federal government to go after the Trump campaign for political reasons, you can't mend that partisan rift. I do want to really quickly address the issue of the spying. This was an informant working on behalf of the FBI for a counterintelligence investigation because the FBI didn't have enough evidence to open up a criminal investigation of the Trump campaign, so they did the counterintelligence investigation instead. And I find it interesting that James Clapper is no longer denying that the spying happened. He's now actually shifted to admitting that it happened,
saying it's
and
a good
saying
thing.
that the president should be happy that it happened. So
And
this
that it should
idea
be
that it wasn't
protected.
spying is a little bit
And that
ridiculous.
the spying was against Russian interference, and when that touched parts of the Trump campaign, which it did, which we know, there were Americans caught up in this because they were talking
Which there's
to
still no
Russians.
evidence it cost Hillary Clinton the election, which is what this investigation all started about.
That's actually not true.
That is
That's
what
actually
the
not
last
true.
word on this.
That
David.
is exactly what this investigation started out is. Did the Russians collude with Trump to cost Hillary Clinton the election? And the proof to date is it didn't.
Well, speaking of, President Trump's legal team is reportedly trying to narrow the scope of any potential interview with Robert Mueller. According to CNN, the president's team wants to limit the questions to matters that occurred before the election, and they also want an audio recording of any interview so there's no doubt as to what was said. Also today, an alleged business partner of a Trump attorney, Michael Cohen, pleading guilty to tax fraud in a deal that requires him to cooperate with the Mueller investigation. A person briefed on the plea says Evangeline Friedman agreed to cooperate with authorities. The president's lawyers are already resigned to the possibility that any inquiry into Cohen's businesses could lead to his cooperation. In a tweet today, Mr. Cohen denied that he was partners with Friedman. So, Lisa, my question for you is, this is turning into a strategy with the White House in terms of the public relations appearance of this. It's pretty smart that they want audio recordings of the president's interviews should he choose to give them to the special counsel.
Well, sure. I mean, look at the Flynn case as evidence of why President Trump would be cautious in wanting to talk to Mueller. I mean, look, I think that President Trump should do everything he can to not speak with Mueller in any capacity whatsoever. But look, Mueller's intentions have already been questioned, and I think they're further going to be questioned as we get additional information. Michael Mukasey, who was the Attorney General under George W. Bush, recently penned an op-ed for USA Today saying that Rosenstein had no evidence and no basis for the special counsel investigation. To begin with, you had a federal judge in the Manafort case basically saying that some of the charges against Manafort were purely designed to go after President Trump to bring impeachment and political harm against him. So I think the more information that we learn, the more you're going to have voices coming out against the Mueller investigation and concerns that a lot of this is political.
Well, and David, the big concern with the special counsel is that they would have unlimited authority. That's the reason why congressmen are asking about the scope memo to see what Rosenstein actually outlined in terms of what he is allowed to investigate, what his jurisdiction is. With the Cohen guilty plea, this seems to ramp up fears about getting the people around the president, squeezing them to get them to cooperate and give information to the special counsel.
It would be a failure of duties if the president's legal team wasn't trying to limit the scope of the investigation. That's what any lawyer does for their clients, is they try to keep it specifically on what the ultimate investigation was about. And if he was allowed to lay out something that anything in Donald Trump's life could be investigated for, that is completely against what this investigation started out as, which I continue to remind Marie, was about whether the Russians colluded with the Trump campaign to defeat Hillary Clinton. That's what this investigation started.
It was about two things, collusion and obstruction of justice. It was about two things, and the obstruction of justice charge deals directly with what Donald Trump did as president. So while his lawyers are doing what lawyers do and trying to limit the scope to not include obstruction, I do not think they'll be successful because that was in the original mandate of the special counsel.
But Harris, there are big questions about, again, how long this goes. Chris Christie, New Jersey governor, said that the president has done some things in his legal opinion to expand the special counsel's investigation. Rudy Giuliani, who's now working for the president as his counsel, has said they want it wrapped up by September 1st for political reasons, the midterm elections, and because it's been almost 2 years since this has been kicked off. The question is how the White House moves forward with people like Cohen entering guilty pleas and starting to cooperate with the special counsel.
I mean, the White House has all along been doing what is politically expedient, and the president made a promise, and maybe he used different words, but he knows that he said that, there's political value in sitting down. So the White House, in the estimation of just pure communications, has been very smart to just keep the door open, keep talking. That doesn't mean that your attorneys that you hire are going to be the same way. I mean, you can play the political game and play the legal game at the same time. So Giuliani's going to look for the best deal. Yeah. That's his job. That's why he's being paid. And the president is going to look out for the politics and all of it, because you've got to be careful. His base won't run if he doesn't give an interview. But independents and others may look at that as, well, you said that you weren't afraid to sit down. And it is about fear now, because everybody keeps talking about how it's entrapment. The president's come strong with this and said, no. I'll do it if my attorneys tell me that it's the right thing to do. You can do both. It's a smooth gymnastics move if your attorneys are looking out and you're listening to them. So we just have to see. I mean, how long is the Mueller investigation going to go on? Who would have known that there would be a spin-off program, like a spin-off from a rom-com on Michael Cohen?
I would remind people that Whitewater, the investigation went on for 6 years.
Right.
6 years. No. So, but if you not unprecedented.
If you look at public perception, though, there was that poll out from CBS not too long ago showing that a majority of Americans now think that this is political. So I think the more information we learn about
it always has been.
But I think the more information that we learn, the more troubling it is. And I think those opinions are going to continue to shift and believing that this was political.
But it's political on all sides, right? I mean, everybody's looking at the polls and trying to figure out what to do next. And
that's a dangerous precedent.
But we don't know what Mueller has.
Right, we don't.
That's
we will wait for it, hopefully September 1st instead of 4 or 5 years, as Marie just said. But breaking news on talks with North Korea amid growing doubts about whether the summit with Kim Jong-un will happen as scheduled. The White House confirms new details about the preparations underway. And a short time ago, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo testifying on Capitol Hill, telling Congress what Kim Jong-un told him. All the details on that, plus President Trump about to head to Long Island, New York, where he will stress the importance of cracking down on illegal immigration and gang violence there and across the country. And we're expecting remarks from the president before he departs. We'll bring those to you when we get them.
We're liberating our towns. I never thought I'd be standing up here talking about liberating the towns on Long Island, where I grew up. But that's what you're doing.
Do you remember when gold was just $20 an ounce? Not long ago, you could buy 5 gold.
Breaking news with the president now. He is about to leave for Joint Base Andrews on his way to New York on Air Force One, which you see parked there waiting him, where he will participate in a roundtable discussion, and illegal immigration and gang violence will be the topic. He made some comments, though, just seconds ago before leaving. And we will bring those to you as we are turning around the videotape right now fresh. So keep watching for that, because as soon as it happens, we'll pop it up on the screen. At the New York event, we expect the president to stress his commitment to ending gang violence in Long Island and across the nation, and tout his administration's crackdown on sanctuary cities. So a lot to cover there. The president recently dubbed MS-13 gang members, you may have heard, calling them animals, a term that got blowback after some media outlets took the comments out of context, separated them from the gang members that he was talking about, and put them on others. But the White House refuses to bend to the criticism. Just yesterday, the White House released a fact sheet with this headline, quote, "What you need to know about the violent animals of MS-13. No misunderstanding that. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley backed the president earlier today on America's Newsroom Watch.
What do you call somebody who comes into this country illegally, unlawfully, whose motto is rape, control, kill? It's not gumdrops, hugs, and kisses. It's a violent, brutal gang that goes across this country terrorizing American citizens. They've been caught cutting people's heads off, tearing people's actual hearts out of their own bodies. This is the type of behavior that is animalistic, and the president rightly called it out. He should be praised and lauded and heralded for calling evil what it is.
David, I want to come to you. We are getting some just notes on what the president talked about outside Marine One. And again, as soon as that video comes up, we'll bring it to you. The president spoke about Spygate, the issue that we've just talked about here atop the show. A lot of bad things have happened with regard to the FBI informant, his campaign he's talking about.
Many Americans would agree with that. Just as he has also talked about his MS-13 gang initiatives to stop that, the efforts he's doing that's where Americans are. They want to be kept safe. And it is in part why the president won, because he pounded that message all throughout the campaign, that he wanted to build a wall. He wanted to get illegals who were here committing crimes out of this country. He wanted to make sure there was a system to make sure the people who come in this country are not criminals, so that we are ultimately being kept safe, and to get rid of sanctuary cities. So all of what he is saying today is in line with what he's been saying since he came on the national stage.
Okay, we're inside of a 2-minute warning now to bring you that brand new videotape from the President of the United States, who sometimes will speak. He's going from Marine One to Air Force One. In fact, it's kind of unprecedented, because you probably couldn't say that often about other presidents, but you might get a little nugget. Yeah. Let me talk just for a second, Marie, and then come to you about why Long Island. Long Island, if you live in this metro, has been a place where so much bloodshed has happened at the hands of MS-13 members. That has been a focal point. He's going to Bethpage, New York, on Long Island with this message.
Right, and I think he has been done a good job of focusing on the threat from MS-13. I think it's something a lot of people didn't know a lot about, and he's focused on that. I think that's a good thing. I keep saying this every time we talk about immigration, but I want a larger national conversation led by the members of the United States Congress about how to fix a whole lot of issues. I know in an election year that's probably not going to happen. This is only one piece of it, and I want a bigger conversation about how to tackle all of it: illegal immigration, sanctuary cities, legal immigration, what that should look like. I know it's a pipe dream, but I'm going to keep saying it.
I think we've had the conversation, though. I mean,
the Congress hasn't done anything.
Yeah. But if we look at past administrations,
right.
He's talked about it and has dealt with it certainly more than the previous 8 years under Obama.
Well, and the reason why this is a focus is because it is an imminent threat to communities inside of America. The president had 2 families at the State of the Union address whose children were killed by MS-13. We'll talk more about that later, but this is a dangerous threat that is happening today.
I'm going to step in and get us prepared to watch this tape. Another thing the president talks about is that meeting in Singapore with Kim Jong-un. There's a lot of news making in the next 7 minutes or so. The President of the United States outside of Marine One stopping to talk to the cameras. Let's now watch this together and watch for all the news points.
A very serious event, but we'll find out. When they look at the documents, I think people are going to see a lot of bad things happen. I hope it's not so, because if it is, there's never been anything like it in the history of our country. I mean, if you look at Clapper, he sort of admitted that they had spies in the campaign yesterday, inadvertently. But I hope it's not true, but it looks like it is.
President, the former FBI director, James Comey, says he used the word spy as the wrong word. He says,
I think James Comey's got a lot of problems. If you look at what he did, if you look at all of the lies, the tremendous lies, if you look at all that's going on, I think James Comey's got a lot of problems. Now, at some point, they have an IG report, and then let's see what James Comey has to say. But I assume he's covered in the IG report. But if you look at what he said, all of the lies, all of the fiction, I think he's got a lot of problems. Well, I don't want to get into it yet, but I will tell you after we look at the proof. Would he know? I would certainly hope not, but I think it's going to be pretty obvious after a while. We're going now to talk about MS-13 with the great police officers. We're going out to Long Island. I don't know Are you coming with us? Does anybody? No? It's going to be very exciting. No. We're not undercutting. We're cleaning everything up. This was a terrible situation. What we're doing is we're cleaning everything up. It's so important. What I'm doing is a service to this country. And I did a great service to this country by firing James Comey. I want them all to get together, and I want them, because everybody wants this solved. But a lot of bad things have happened. We now call it Spygate. You're calling it Spygate. A lot of bad things have happened. I want them all to get together. They'll sit in a room. Hopefully, they'll be able to work it out among themselves. NAFTA? Excuse me, NAFTA? I think your auto workers and your auto companies in this country are going to be very happy with what's going to happen. You'll be seeing very soon what I'm talking about. NAFTA is very difficult. Mexico has been very difficult to deal with. Canada has been very difficult to deal with. They have been taking advantage of the United States for a long time. I am not happy with their requests, but I will tell you, in the end, we win. We will win, and we'll win big. We'll get along with Mexico, we'll get along with Canada, but I will tell you, they have been very difficult to deal with. They're very spoiled because nobody's done this, but I will tell you that what they asked for is not fair. Our auto workers are going to be extremely happy.
What about Rod Rosenstein, sir? What about your Deputy Attorney General, sir?
Say it what?
Are you 100% committed following through on going to the...
Well, we're going to see what happens on Singapore. We're going to see. And it could happen, could very well happen. But whatever it is, we will know next week about Singapore. And if we go, I think it'll be a great thing for North Korea. I can't hear you, John.
Yesterday in the Oval Office, you seemed to suggest some pessimism about the June 12th date. Do you think that will actually happen?
Someday a date will happen. It could very well be June 12th. Someday a date will absolutely happen. It could very well be June 12th. We'll see. We'll know next week.
Why won't you say whether you have confidence in Rod Rosenstein?
Well, they're going to all be in the room tomorrow. We're going to see what happens. What I want is I want total transparency. Wait, you have to have transparency. Even they probably want transparency because this issue supersedes a party. This supersedes Republicans and Democrats. So what I want from Rod, from the FBI, from everybody, we want transparency. And you know what? I think in their own way, they are obstructionists, but even the Democrats, I really believe, on this issue, it supersedes. I think they want transparency too. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, the president making some big news with that last part. Did you hear about that? He talked a lot about what he says even the media are calling Spygate, with the news that there was an FBI informant in some fashion talking with people in the Trump campaign. Now, the live look that you see on the left side of the screen, you'll see the president walk into that. He's actually already on board, I should say, because that was tape play from moments ago. And now that's Marine One. Marine One heads to Joint Base Andrews, where he'll get on Air Force One. He'll fly from Maryland to New York for that meeting, that roundtable discussion on illegal immigration, MS-13, all of it here in New York, Bethpage, New York, Long Island, where so much of that gang activity has happened. In this part of the country, it has been vicious. And some of the cases that you hear about have happened right here. So people here on the East Coast are very familiar with the viciousness, the bloodshed by MS-13. But let's bring it out to the couch now. The president saying, I want total transparency. He did lean in and talk just a second about North Korea and then flip back to Spygate. Who was inside looking at the Trump campaign? He says from Rod, first name, which we think is the AG deputy, right? Rod Rosenstein. From the FBI, he says all of this supersedes Republicans, Democrats. Even Democrats want to know the answers. David?
Exactly. The best way to get this investigation wrapped up is for there to be full transparencies and questions answered. But, you know, seeing the president have that conversation right there, it goes to all of this complaints that he's not doing enough media conferences and he's not having people into the East Room to have a big presidential press conference. Is there any question what the president thinks, given his Twitter and given his willingness that every time he goes on a trip, he stops and makes a few comments? This is a very open president if you want to know what he's thinking.
In terms of the transparency argument that he's making about the special counsel, the interview that we've been talking about with maybe him sitting down, and specifically the meeting today with congressmen on Capitol Hill going and looking at the classified information, more transparency, the better. And the thing that's been frustrating is media reports are all based on anonymous sourcing, classified information, redacted material. If we can get both sides to the table to talk about what actually went on and see for ourselves, it's not so much he said, she said, as it is about what happened and getting to the bottom of it to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
I totally agree. I mean, because, as I said earlier, there are so many insinuations being made, and because there's no evidence in the public to back them up, it's really easy to say, oh, we think they had a spy. Let's just get the facts.
Just to step in here, you see the president saluting military there on the ground at Joint Base Andrews, Maryland. Now he will board after getting off of Marine One. He'll board Air Force One and then head to New York, to Long Island. Gang activity will be his focus, but just want to acknowledge the fact that the president of the United States is walking across that tarmac. And we've already heard from him, but I tell you what, the microphones are always on with this president because you never know. But we think now he's going to board Air Force One. We'll let him climb up those red stairs and we'll continue the conversation right here. This trip obviously is not very long, so he'll pop up in the next short little while on the ground in New York and the discussion will continue. But he has set the stage, Lisa, for a lot of different topics today. And while MS-13 and the illegal immigration and sanctuary cities will be talked at about that roundtable, on bookends of that discussion is, did someone spy on my presidential campaign, and can we get to the bottom of that?
There are a lot of topics to go through that he's even just in the past few minutes. But of course, this is an issue we do want to get to the bottom of it. My concern, you know, I go back to my original point. My concern is that everyone is so tainted in this, and I think Americans are so frustrated with the abundance of information out there, some of it having not been true, with some of these various reports having been debunked, not true. I think everyone views Congress as too political. They don't trust the DOJ. They don't trust the FBI. They don't trust Trump. And so my hope is that the Inspector General report, both with the way the Clinton investigation was handled, and now that he's also been tasked to look at potential FISA abuse and an expanded view on if there was political bias regarding President Trump as well, my hope is that it gets to the bottom of this. It leads to any firings that need to happen, as we saw with Andrew McCabe, and that there's sort of a cleaning of house and cleaning of bad actors, and we can get back to a place where Americans can trust these institutions, because it is important to be able to trust the FBI. It isn't important to trust the DOJ, and it's important to be able to trust the president.
It's important not to have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like the FBI should just be doing its job. Like before this,
I think
have
they
you
feel
ever,
like they are.
Well,
and that
for
the
thousands of them
going
they are.
after
You're
them
absolutely
for
right,
political
Marie.
reasons.
Well, I saw that report
But we're talking
today.
about bad actors potentially, and those who showed bias in their text messages.
Or Andrew McCabe having lied four different times as evidenced by the
There was a report in the
Inspector
Daily
General
Caller
report
today that showed that FBI agents on the ground want to be subpoenaed so they can actually talk about their side of the story. Because right now it's the people at the top who are getting all the attention.
And you can't
but the guys
blame
on the
them.
ground have things to say.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, you know, this question came up.
Which there
was a lot. I tell you, when I board a helicopter, doesn't happen. Will the North Korea summit actually happen or not? New reaction to the president warning it could be delayed. And just moments ago, he said outside Marine One, someday a date will happen. Could be June. Someday a date will happen. We'll see. We'll know next week. Breaking news from the president on the issue of the meeting with the man on the right, the dictator from North Korea, from our president just moments ago. New insights on North Korea's dictator, too, from Secretary of State Pompeo testifying on Capitol Hill. It's all happening now. Stay close.
He has shared candidly that he understands that economic growth for his people, the well-being of his people, depends on a strategic shift I'm very hopeful that he and President Trump will get a chance to elaborate on them further in the next couple weeks.
Visit Dexcomnow.com to learn more.
Fox News alerts Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Capitol Hill taking questions on next month's highly anticipated summit with North Korea, a day after President Trump warned that it may not happen on June 12th. The president saying there's a substantial chance it could be delayed. During an Oval Office meeting yesterday with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, this is what he said.
There's a very substantial chance that it won't work out, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it won't work out over a period of time, but it may not work out for June 12th.
The president also appearing to back away from his demand that the North Koreans dismantle its nuclear program immediately.
It would certainly be better if it were all in one. Does it have to be? I don't think I want to totally commit myself, but all in one would be a lot better.
In the meantime, Secretary Pompeo says a bad deal is not an option, as he related to lawmakers in his recent conversations with dictator Kim Jong-un.
He has shared candidly that he understands that economic growth for his people, the well-being of his people, depends on a strategic shift. And we hope he's prepared to make that. Our demands have been unambiguous. When I spoke with him, I could not have been clearer about the scope of the verification work that would be required, all of the elements that would be necessary in order for America to understand that there had been real denuclearization. I'm very hopeful that he and President Trump will get a chance to elaborate on them further in the next couple weeks.
Also, two White House officials confirmed to Fox News that a group of top administration aides are heading to Singapore this weekend to set up agenda and logistics with North Koreans for the summit, which is currently still scheduled for June 12th. So, David, based on Secretary Pompeo's remarks about not going in with a bad deal, it seems like they've been very clear about what's expected, and maybe that's the reason why Kim Jong-un is having a little bit of cold feet when it comes to giving up his program.
The status quo is worse for North Korea than it is for the United States. And Pompeo, Secretary Pompeo underscored that by your people, his people in North Korea cannot get enough food. They can't get enough medicine. They are in a terrible situation. He blew up their nuclear facilities, according to reports, so they don't even have much equipment, according to some intelligence analysis. What they have is the knowledge of how to build it, and that's really what we have to put a tap on, is them continuing to gain knowledge on how to build a nuclear weapon. But if he wants, and quite frankly, he's a hassle for China, that every time the president talks with the Chinese president, President Trump's bringing it up, and so it's another hassle for China.
Yeah.
He can't have the status quo remain.
That's not how he sees it, though.
It's interesting because yesterday the president was upset because he thought that North Korea's behavior, that Kim Jong-un's behavior actually changed every time he talked with the president of China, Xi. And that he said he was concerned about that he didn't like it. I'm quoting him now. I don't like it. I'm curious to know what those conversations are really textured as, because you know who doesn't want to get left out of the party is China.
Yeah.
That's right.
They want to control North Korea.
Marie, I'd like to get your position on that, because you've worked in these kinds of negotiations before at the State Department. When the president's talking about not liking what he's seeing in the attitude change, that means that he thinks China and North Korea are working behind his back in these secret meetings to derail some of the efforts by the United States and South Korea.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were doing that. But North Korea feels like it's in a pretty good position right now. They have nuclear weapons. They have ballistic missiles that are increasingly capable of reaching the United States. They feel like, yes, their people are starving, but I don't think Kim Jong-un actually cares that much. He feels militarily like he's in a position of strength. Now, I think what you've seen is President Trump trying to sort of recalibrate expectations for the meeting, if it happens, when it happens, which I think is actually a good thing, because the expectations were so out of whack with the reality here. But what's interesting is I think the South Koreans may have oversold this a bit. The South Koreans are very much pushing for these talks, and I have a sense the South Koreans oversold to Donald Trump what the North Koreans were willing to do just to get everyone to the table, because they're scared of conflict.
Right.
And to show you just how much South Korea is hoping that this will work out, they were still well north of 50% 100%.
They're at 99% yesterday.
That this is going to happen, even though the South Korean journalists weren't even allowed to do what the United States and Chinese journalists were allowed to do, and that was watch some of the dismantling yesterday.
And I'm sure South Korea hopes that some sort of deal is reached because you have lives that are imminent, immediately at risk there in South Korea. You were talking about tens of millions of people that could die as a result of some sort of military conflict, particularly given if nukes were involved. It was interesting. I read a report talking about how Kim Jong-un is worried about some sort of military coup back home if he goes and meets with President Trump. So I wonder if that has anything to do with any sort of hesitancy as well. But President Trump should be willing to walk away, because I think it does send a strong message to Kim Jong-un that we're not messing around. I don't want just a deal. I want a good deal or no deal at all.
All right. Well, we have some more breaking news coming up. A new NFL policy on players kneeling during the national anthem. That, of course, a huge issue for President Trump during football season. We're going to have those details coming up next.
Kneelgate. A Fox News alert the NFL now, saying that it will try to put the big controversy over players kneeling during the national anthem behind them. The league released today its new policy, and a statement says this season, all league and team personnel shall stand and show respect for the flag and the anthem. Personnel who choose not to stand for the anthem may stay in the locker room until after the anthem has played. We believe today's decision will keep our focus on the game and the extraordinary athletes who play it, and on our fans who enjoy it. The Players Association, not too happy with the new policy. Part of its statement reads this way: the NFL chose not to consult the union in the development of this new policy. NFL players have shown their patriotism through their social activism, their community service in support of our military and law enforcement, and yes, through their protests to raise awareness about the issues they care about, end quote. David.
Fans watch the NFL to see football. They don't want players kneeling for tax cuts any more than they don't want to see players kneeling for social justice reasons. People go to NFL games to watch football, and that's what the focus ought to be on, and that's what this policy tries to get us towards.
That's an interesting comparison, Marie.
It is. It's a bizarre one, sort of.
Really?
Well, no, the thought of anyone kneeling for tax cuts.
Would you advocate somebody
their paychecks got bigger because they're in that category of.
Would you be for advocating players getting on their knee for a conservative cause?
I'm for players being able to exercise their First Amendment rights.
So whatever that cause is, whether it be social justice.
Absolutely. And look, I think the NFL may have stumbled a little bit here because, first of all, this has been a very hot issue, as we all know. We've covered it a lot here. They really should have coordinated with the Players Association.
Why?
Because you can't have games without players. And they have an incentive for the players to be happy. And I understand they care about the bottom line.
You think those players aren't going to play this game because they have to stay in the locker room?
I'm not saying they're not going to play. I just think it would have done everyone a lot of good.
Colin Kaepernick's first name is unemployed.
But why couldn't they coordinate with the Players Association?
Maybe
they didn't want to fight. Maybe they wanted to come down.
Now they have a public fight. Now they have a public fight. Yes.
I find it disgusting that a guy who wore socks depicting police officers as pigs was ever looked at to be a leader of anything. And I find that disgusting that anyone even looked at him for leadership, period.
It's bigger than
Secondly,
him,
I think these individuals are at work to play a game, to play a sport. They should stand out for the national anthem, put their hand over the heart, and be happy that they are living in the United States of America, a place that allows them to get to pay millions of dollars to play a sport and to be able to climb the ladder and live in a country where you have upward mobility and you have the ability to play a sport and make money. So we live in the greatest country in the world, and I think it's disgraceful that this ever became an issue in the first place.
So, Katie,
and under Marie's thinking, I want to work for her because I then will get a say in every personnel policy that gets made.
Oh, boy, that'll be complicated. So, Katie, if you flip this and you look on the other side, is it fair to keep people in the locker room and not showing their protest publicly? Because that's what critics will ask.
That's a little bit of a cop-out to say if you don't want to be on the field with your team, you can stay inside. I think that's, certainly.
Do you think that actually is stifling their right to protest?
I don't think you have a right to protest at work, and that's exactly what these people are doing. The NBA has had a policy for years about standing up for the national anthem, and when you look at the statement that Roger Goodell just put out, he says it's unfortunate that the on-field protests gave the NFL a depiction that we are unpatriotic. Well, guess what? That's exactly what you did. It took you 2 years to deal with this problem. And finally, after your ratings went down significantly and you had fans of 30, 40 years tuning out of your games, not going to the games, you finally stood up with a spine and on behalf of the American flag, which so many people have died to represent. So it really wasn't a tough decision.
Well, and
it's unfortunate that he took so long to make it.
It's all about
David,
money.
when you talk about patriotism, though,
About
and
money.
yes, it's a free market, so we'll see what people do.
About money.
When you talk about patriotism, though, for those players who wanted to show their support and show in a different way, it kind of colored everybody in with the same brush. The president played a role. You had politicians playing a role.
Look, it's a hot button issue. There's no question about it. But it doesn't change the fundamentals, which is fans tune in to NFL games to watch football, and that should be the
how ridiculous
And
that it ever became a controversial issue. Standing for the flag, the national anthem, and putting your hand over. How is that a controversial issue from
Protest
the beginning?
is an
That's
incredibly
ridiculous.
patriotic theme, too, throughout our history.
Yeah.
Protest is it's about being patriotic. They believe they're trying
Go
to make the
protest
country
at
better.
home.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
So.
Here is something big banks don't